Hello, everybody. Sterling R. Jackson. Today, I want to talk about open throat technique. Some people might know that term and might have heard that term before in regards to singing, and some people may not. There's a lot of things that it kind of entails, but we're going to go over some of those today in a short lesson here. If you join me on Patreon, the lesson will be extended. But anyway, let's jump right into it. So, first of all, open throat technique is basically talking about, in a summarized way, keeping the throat open, of course, while singing. There's many different types of pressure and tensions that are built via enunciation, via the vowel that you're singing, how high you're singing, things like that are causing problematic areas and can cause your placement to drop, or cause a lot of different things, cause you to just sound bad. So as we get into understanding what open throat feels like, we can kind of start to tell when we're hitting a wall or when we're starting to clamp down in places that aren't really supposed to be clamped down in. Now, one of the most perfect examples of this that most people run into is that as people get closer to their bridge, their flipping point where their voice flips, they tend to have their larynx raise up and up, and all this tension builds like this. The placement drops out of the front of the face, and then we flip because our voice is protecting us from tearing our vocal cords or from hurting ourselves. That's what a flip is. That's what the bridge is there for. It's to protect the voice. But there are other ways to get around that, and there are healthy ways to get around that. One of the ways is to maintain an open throat. And having an open throat is also going to allow your resonance to be bigger and sound boomier and all these different things. There's definitely a lot of benefits. Now, one of the easiest ways we can jump into this is by, and I've had students that can't do this, but if you fake yawn and find where your larynx is here. It's easy for men because we have an Adam's apple, but if you can find where your larynx is, right behind that are your vocal cords. And if you can fake yawn, I want you to get that larynx to drop as far as you can. So if you watch mine, that's me fake yawning. We're really stretching and opening the back of the throat. If you imagine the back of the throat is like a circle like this, we're going and we're opening that up. Oh, we're fake yawning like that. Now instantly that's going to make your voice a lot bigger. Therein lies the point of what we're starting to get into. So we're opening that space up, and it's a bigger resonance chamber. Okay, so let's get into a couple different parts of this. First of all, we talked about the larynx. We talked about the vocal cords being positioned behind the larynx. As we sing higher, we talked about that tending to go upwards. So if you go ah and try to get closer to your bridge, see if that larynx is going to go up on you, or see if you're somebody that already kind of knows how to control it. Oh, if you're able to do what I'm doing right now, you're going to be maintaining what's called a neutral larynx, which is to say your voice box is tilting and you're opening your throat, but you're allowing that larynx to stay in a neutral position, which is something that we want to try to learn how to attain. Now your larynx is going to move around, but once again, we're getting away from that habit or that habitual thing of going and getting tight, because that nobody wants to hear that. We also come across an important thing, which is verticality, and something I do with all my students all the time, which is maintaining a vertical position in your mouth and in the way you're enunciating, and not going horizontal. The tendency to go horizontal, if you can't already logically tie this together, gets us back into this space where everything builds in tension like this. Me! Like this, and it brings all this tension into the face, and everything goes south. So when you think about verticality, or you watch an opera singer or somebody that really studies singing, you'll see that most of the things that they're doing are very vertical. Like this, we'll take a couple little sirens here, back and forth, for example. If I sing something like A, I don't want the A to spread me horizontally. I want to think about it vertically. A, and I want to be loose enough in the jaw that I'm not carrying any tension into the jaw, even as I go higher. A, Does that make some sense? So now you might be thinking to yourself, what about E or something like that, or a vowel like U, which tends to bring tension into the face, or that's not a very vertical kind of vowel, which is not a very vertical type of vowel. Well, something like E or U pushes you towards head voice because it has a tendency to bring tension into the face and jaw. Me, it's like this, right? Me. So we want to also be thinking vertically when we sing something like that. Me, me, and we're doing what's called vowel modification. Vowel modification can get really complex, and I really don't believe as a teacher that it needs to be that complex. Essentially, everything needs to maintain this level of verticality. If you're singing higher, you need to pay more attention to that vertical or that verticality, because it's going to get harder to sing, especially if you're singing something like E or U. So we take it and we stretch it this way. E. Let's do something like this together. And we'll take something like A, and we'll start it normal, and then we'll take and make it more vertical as we go higher on these scales. It sounds like this. A, A. So we're stretching the jaw on purpose vertically. Same thing, let's do a hard one. Where am I? E. E. You hear how that E goes away immediately? That's by design, because we're vowel modifying it and we're making it bigger like this. We're making it more vertical. E. E. Now, like I said, that's called vowel modification. As you sing higher, it becomes even more difficult. And one of the most perfect classic rock examples of this is Man in the Box. When he sings "Feed My Eyes" in the chorus, I think it's up here. Feed! He does not say feed. That would be absolutely ridiculously difficult to do, especially for his voice type. Feed! Feed my eyes! So he sings fade. And he's just taking that E and he's making it more vertical and he's making it bigger and he's vowel modifying. Whether he knew about that or not, it's just not something people are doing to sound cool. I'm sure that's out there. But it's something that you're doing by necessity. Feed my eyes is much harder than feed my eyes. Does that make sense? Hopefully I'm not blowing the mic up there. So, we talked a little bit about vowel modification. So now let's talk about enunciation as well. And like I said, we're moving fast because we're talking about a lot of different things in this. Enunciation. Enunciation needs to happen right here in the front of the face, right here in the very front, and we try to leave everything else nice and open because we're trying to maintain an open throat. So what I want you to pretend is that you're holding a ball in the mouth or closer to the back of the mouth, like this. And remember, when you're doing these kinds of exercises or when you're doing these kinds of corrective muscular exercises when singing, you're overcorrecting, and it should sound kind of dumb. It should sound kind of overplayed and overdone. You're trying to understand these things on a muscular level so that you can then normalize them and come back to, a normal kind of singing. But overdo it at first. Push it way too far so that you really start to understand what it feels like, and then normalize it as it makes sense. So right here again, if we do a couple of these vowels and we hold this ball shape, imagine there's like a circle or a ring sitting in the mouth. bit of that change right here to give me some of that enunciation, but it doesn't really matter because I'm just trying to maintain a nice open sound or a nice open feeling. Now we can take open throat a little bit farther if we start pushing you up through your bridge, because that's where people are mostly going to be having trouble with this issue. And I kind of mentioned this already. If we're singing correctly or we're learning how to keep the throat open, we're yawning into the sound. Oh, we're going to be having a tilt thing happening here. And what's happening is that our entire voice box is shifting like this, and we're stretching the vocal cords in a healthy way downward. Therefore, we are able to sing higher because we're stretching the vocal cords like this. We're actually using less and less of the vocal cords, and we're zipping them up. But anyway, we're stretching the voice like this. We're maintaining that same open sound. Instead of having tension build like this, we are equalizing that tension. Everything in singing is about the way you're playing with that tension, the way you're utilizing it. Sometimes we can have tension that sounds nice, and sometimes we can have tension that ruins the voice. I recently did something where I was covering Motorhead. As you can imagine, there's tension all over the place. It's just like, how fast can I ruin my voice? Anyway, you can tell if you start breaking this information down logically, we're just playing with tension and then trying to equalize that in different ways. So, if we take something like this, and we take O, which is very chest voicey and very open, and then we move it to oo, we're going to be trying to yawn through both of these sounds, and we're going to go oh, oh. We're going to let that go up into the head, and we're going to yawn. So keep it going, keep it going. Oh, 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 oh. Check in with your larynx. Oh. Oh, 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 keep going. Oh, 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 oh. Let's do one more. Oh, let's do a couple more going back down, but we'll slow it down because I don't want you jumping over that bridge. I don't want you going, oh, I want you to go, oh. And really try to feel that yawn, because that's what's keeping my vocal cords together. Where the hell am I? Oh, 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 oh. One more. Oh. See, there's a little bit of flip there for me too. Oh. Now don't try to do these loud either. You hear me quieting down. Essentially what's happening is if we're singing correctly, the voice is getting smaller as we go higher. We're turning it into a point. Oh, like this. The voice doesn't get louder as we go higher. If you think about something with a higher voice, typically you would think about something that's smaller and smaller. Logic. Just tying logic to all this is a good thing. We can't have the voice go ah and go this way. We have to have it closing in like this so that we're equalizing the pressure. So I hope you got something out of this. I'm going to continue this lesson and go over to Patreon now, but thank you for joining me. I'll be doing more lessons like this soon. All right, Patreon people, let's keep taking this lesson farther. So we talked about yawning, we talked about vowels, we talked about vowel modification, we talked about larynx, we talked about this tilt. This tilt thing is super important, and the reason I like to talk about it or keep bringing it up is because I never heard anybody reference it before in terms of me trying to learn how to, to teach myself and things like that. But that feeling, I'll say it like this, there's a lot of different ways you can cover this information, and a lot of it's similar and a lot of it's the same, but I like to keep throwing different terminology and different ways for you to try to grasp onto it, because if I keep saying the same thing over and over again and you don't get it, and I'm not giving you another way to try to adhere to the information or try to understand it, it sucks. So for me, being able to be perceptive and understand these things on a physical level, what I should be searching for in terms of a feeling, that stuff is very helpful. So that tilt, for example, was a big part of that. As you're learning how to mix or you're learning how to sing higher, you're setting yourself up before you get to your bridge by starting to stretch. So instead of going like this and then having to jump back, you're learning how to engage everything and move it correctly through. Which what I mean by that is, if my bridge is right here between these two notes, and it is, I can't bring tension up, and then get there and then tilt and then try to learn how to tilt or mix or whatever. I have to be learning how to mix before I get to my bridge, and therefore setting myself up to go higher. So do a little bit of this O to U thing again, but your bridge is probably close to where mine is or a little bit farther, so I'll push you up there. So, oh, here I sound like a spooky ghost. Oh, my larynx is way down. I'm trying to yawn. Oh, and that's what's giving me that nice setup for the to go higher. Oh, so you should be feeling Another important distinction here is that we're not going to falsetto. We're not losing our vocal clarity or our vocal cord closure. We're maintaining vocal cord closure. And we're not getting caught in either one of these. We're not getting stuck in, I'm getting stuck up here. And we're not going, and starting to shout. Once again, if I go note by note, start tilting before you get to your bridge and start looking for that tilting sensation. Same thing with any other vowel. Same thing with A. And we'd be modifying a little bit if we need to. When you're starting to learn how to mix, it's better to modify things and make them more hooty or more head voicey, in that we're making them more round like that, more vertical on purpose to keep the voice together and not flipping. So A would go A, A. Does that make sense? My phone's shutting off. Oh, good. Same thing with E. E. You hear that? That's vowel modification. E. Vertical. E. So let's do a couple of those so you can hear me do it at the same time. A. 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 One more. Same thing with E. Difficult one. Don't worry about shedding the E. We got to get rid of the E. Think about Man in the Box. Same thing. E. E. It's almost like you're going through a Y. E. I'm turning knobs. E. 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 Now, if you feel like your voice needs to get quieter to do this, like you're going like this, that is also a good thing, because you're starting to learn to back off the pressure, because once again, you cannot bring that pressure up and expect to get through your bridge. You have to quiet down to get through your bridge, especially when you're starting to learn these things. But you can hear, when we jump back to open throat here, that my throat is maintaining a nice openness, that we're not changing a lot of things that are happening, and the quality of my voice isn't necessarily changing. It's staying nice and open, and then it's being forced open so I can sing higher. Oh! If we take some of these notes like this, oh, oh, and we start to really open them, you can tell what I'm talking about with open throat, right? Much bigger, especially with diaphragmatic support underneath. Oh, oh. Very nice, right? So, what else can we go over here? We went over enunciation as well. Let's take some of these scales like this. Just because I want to throw something complicated at you. But we're going to be doing it with open throat, and we're going to be doing it with a sound like ma, but we're gonna make it more like ma 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 ma, ba ba ba, like that, but with ma. Ma 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 ma. Ready? Same yawning sensation. Ma 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 ma. So now you might get caught. Ma 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 ma. We don't need too much of the. We're keeping everything nice and relaxed. Ma 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 one more. Hear all that? Hear all that open throatness? Open throatiness? I hope you got something out of this. If you have any questions, once again, you're on Patreon. You don't have many patrons on here. I'm open to answer questions. I can even make videos answering some of these questions. But these are complex topics, and they take time to learn, and they take time to build. These are things that require you to, tune in every day and practice a little bit, because it's a muscle memory game. If you remember that tilt and you get it for one day, and then you don't do it the next day, you might be like, yeah, I learned how to mix voice and I finally learned it. And then you'll go back and you'll be like, I don't fucking remember how to do it. Happens a lot. Or if you're somebody that knew it really well, like I did, and then you quit music for a while or something, you might also forget some of these things or have trouble with them. So try to put in a little bit of practice each day. If I haven't already said this, one of my favorite exercises to do, especially now that I'm trying to get my voice back, is to just sit and watch TV at the end of the night whenever you're relaxing, if you can get away with this, and just do M's and keep moving up and down. You can do them with your mouth closed, which is why I suggest doing that, and you can quietly just keep moving back and forth like that. You're really stretching the vocal cords, which is great for them, and you're also teaching yourself that tilt and how to move up into the head, the elevator effect. So I also got new music coming. I have a couple covers that I did. I'm trying to finish up, and hopefully posting one of those tomorrow, but it's always complicated trying to do videos for these goofy ass things. But all right, I'll see you soon.